What's not to love about Katamari Damacy? It's whimsical, ridiculous, and a lot of fun. I can't say I have ever met someone who has played this game and didn't enjoy the experience. There is something so oddly compelling about rolling around ever increasingly large balls of crap, albeit at the direction and sometimes ridicule of the godlike overlord known as the King. And while the game's cutscenes and plotline are just an amusing, nonsensical way to lend some small manner of story, it's the gameplay which is really the star of the show. And it seems there really is a rather somber message lurking in the background. When I brought this up to a few people, they thought I was nuts. And so you have to think, what kind of message could possibly be found in a game with singing ducks, dancing panda bears, and a class of planet-smashing godlike creatures with strange-shaped heads? Does this sound like blasphemy to you? Well, it most certainly sounded like that to me until I decided to take a closer look at one of the most loved yet least understood games that I know of. One might ask, why the heck would I even be taking Katamari so seriously in the first place? To even have the thought occur to me that I should analyze this game in more detail. Did I run out of other stuff to talk about or something? That's a very good question. A question which I suppose is related to an awareness of the quality of our attention. And also because I'm just nuts for symbolism, as you know. Katamari always stuck with me many years after I first played it. And it always felt like there was something more going on. Just like when you take the time to really listen to the lyrics of an up-tempo and happy song, or at least a song that sounds happy, and then later on you discover the lyrics are really quite tragic and sad, and it's not all. This song is not at all what you thought it was for all those years. Well, Katamari is exactly that. Now, does anybody remember Outkast's international smash hit Hey Ya? That's not a happy song at all. Sounds happy. Well, whatever the word is for that sort of contrapositioning of upbeat music and downright sad lyrics, Katamari is the video game version of whatever we want to call that. Now, the music video for Hey Ya has something approaching like 500 million views on YouTube. It's a huge, still to this day, it's a huge song. I wonder how many people noticed the casket that was on the stage in the video. Or how many people have actually read the lyrics and realized this song is actually a eulogy to dying love. And also notice the heart directly above the casket. And then notice the two hearts moving away from it, symbolizing two people abandoning the love they once shared. Tragedy meets hope, I suppose. And also notice that that heart in the middle is actually a faded color, right? And then the other two hearts are kind of a darker color. So that also signifies kind of a withering away or a death of love. Now, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, of course, since this video is appearing on Christmas of all days. So happy Christmas / Hanukkah / Kwanzaa / whatever your thing is. But the only way out of darkness is through it. We cannot go around it. So I should also say that there is a positive payoff at the end of this exploration of Katamari. One which took me quite by surprise, I have to say. And don't forget, if Katamari Damacy is one of your favorite games, it's also one of my favorite games. So I'm not here to paint Katamari in a wholly negative light and then forget about this completely and move on to the next video series like nothing happened. Now, going back to the Hey Ya video for a moment, Did anyone else notice Andre 3000 playing the acoustic guitar off to the side of the stage by himself? I don't remember that from seeing the video way back when. I just thought that was an interesting visual there. So then if Katamari is really a sort of metaphysical Trojan horse, what sort of message is attempting to sneak inside of the gates, under the cover of darkness anyway? And where exactly is this message to be found? In the world of video games, if there is one thing that can be found in abundance, it's fill in the blank. Violence, right? Violence. And Katamari doesn't seem like that sort of game at all. And it really isn't, at least on the surface. Now, I'm not saying Katamari is a violent video game that's trying to somehow dupe the player into thinking it's not. But what I am saying is that we cannot go around thinking of things simplistically as either innocent or guilty, right? Or good or bad or that sort of thing. Because just because Katamari doesn't have like Grand Theft Auto, level violence doesn't mean that it is completely innocent or it's not relaying a deeper message, right? Or it's not trying to point out something deep and dark about humanity, because it actually is. So this sort of thinking of things as good or bad, or innocent or guilty, that sort of thinking leads us to miss what the game's creator is trying to say. In fairness, the thing to remember about anything in life made by humans is that unconsciously, anything we make is unconsciously containing our hopes and dreams, as well as our fears and our dark side. Such is the paradox of life, which is inescapable, and it's something which is described as a balance between two ends of a single polarity. Now, Katamari Damacy is another example of the eternal paradox of life. Sure, it is cute, innocent fun, but at the very same time, its creator, Keita Takahashi, was delivering a very somber message through this amazing game. While Takahashi set out to create a fun game, I would say he more than delivered in that department. The underlying message coming straight from the creator is that our civilization is obsessed with consumerism. We're obsessed with tchotchkes and gadgets and knickknacks. So much so that just about nobody gave a second thought or even questioned if the intention behind a game in which the goal is to roll up increasingly larger balls of stuff were somehow related to or somehow holding up a mirror to the way we live. At least most people didn't catch that. In a polite society, it seems to be acceptable to deliver the most insightful and important messages about society in a way that is light and entertaining so that it isn't taken so seriously. Stand-up comedy and video games are two of these mediums of expression which traditionally haven't been taken that seriously. And two mediums which, of course, are perfect for delivering the most truthful yet not easily accepted messages, like the fact that what represents progress in the minds of many are really just amounts to refinements and innovations which appear in new generations of smartphones and cars and flat screen TVs. Now, from last year's estimates, 2019, imagine a giant Katamari Ball of discarded electronics weighing in at over 50 million tons, if you can imagine that, which is the rough equivalent of 350 cruise ships just kind of rolled together. And this giant ball of garbage of discarded electronic goods just is kind of rolled over somewhere to Southeast Asia and just left there. Even with all of the innovative efforts being made by Apple to address the massive amounts of e-waste every year, it is surprising that such a leading company hasn't made any major adjustments in its manufacturing process in the opposite direction. I know they're trying, but I don't think they're trying hard enough, in my opinion. Now, there happens to be a very real conspiracy of stuff. And this has greatly contributed to the giant hazardous Katamari balls of waste that we developed nations conveniently roll to the other side of the planet in order to basically just forget about it. But really, we're just prolonging the inevitable. It all started with a light bulb, of all things. Now, the light bulb in this image is from a webcam that's in a firehouse in Livermore, California. They have a webcam on this light bulb. It's amazing, right? People are like, why? This is so boring. This light bulb has been burning since 1901, with only a few interruptions in power during that time. Now, in 2001, there was a huge birthday party held for this light bulb, and nearly 1,000 people attended the birthday party for a light bulb. A light bulb that has lasted well over 100 years now seems as some sort of engineering anomaly, or perhaps there's some sort of magic going on. Except there really isn't anything all too extraordinary about a light bulb that lasts 50, 75, or even longer. And while the light bulb in the Livermore firehouse most certainly has exceeded expectations as far as its lifespan, it also has exceeded its useful lifespan, as it really only puts out about 5 watts versus the original 40 to 60 watts it was designed for. Before 1925, light bulbs were actually designed to last 30 years, 50 years, or more. That is until the Phoebus group, or the Phoebus cartel, put a stop to it. This cartel was a group of light bulb manufacturers that agreed in secret to only make light bulbs which would last 1,000 hours or so at a maximum, so that they could sell more light bulbs. Because if you think about it, if you make a really, really good light bulb that lasts 50 years, sure, you're going to sell a lot of light bulbs, but then you're not going to sell a lot more light bulbs. No one's going to be coming back needing your product anymore because your product is just too good. And so naturally, just about every manufacturer of consumer goods on the planet since then has followed this model, which is known as planned obsolescence. You make something that has a certain not a shelf life, but you make something that has a certain service life, and then after that, you either come out with a new product. Look at how much better this is than that thing. This is so much better. It's amazing. Or you just make something that when it breaks, there's no replaceable parts, so the consumer has to go buy another brand new version of that thing. This model is great for business, and there's no doubt it's a great way to make money, and it's great for business, but it's terrible for the long-term prospects of life on this planet. It's terrible. So just like the manufacturers, which has pumped out millions of gadgets with little to no replaceable parts over the decades, without a second thought, we happily roll our Katamari around in the game without thinking of the long-term consequences of maybe the real-life massive piles of Katamari junk balls that have been rolled over to lesser developed parts of the world and then just dumped there and forgotten about. So then, what about the positive message? Because that's kind of a bummer, right? How can we put this in perspective and take away something good for the holidays? After all, it's Christmas, which means we are supposed to be happy, right? Or at least that's the idea. One important thing to understand is that Katamari Damacy succeeds in teaching us to revel in our own ignorance. I don't think the creator of the game even meant to do that. But if you think about it in that specific way, it definitely accomplishes this. Or at least once we are aware, or once we can be aware of this reveling in our own ignorance through this Katamari experience, both in a video game and also in the real world, we can at least be reminded of the fact that humanity, in many of its endeavors, is oftentimes involved in what appears to be Nothing more than just rolling around a giant Katamari ball for this reason or that reason. A reason which seems like a good idea at the time, only to later down the road find out about certain unintended consequences associated with our actions, both collectively and as individuals. While such a message could be interpreted negatively or even nihilistic, which I expect the nihilists among us to certainly do, there is a positive element of this sentiment which needs to be considered. And that positive element is that by coming to the understanding that if we are all in fact, like the Socratic paradoxes, right? I know that I know nothing. If we're in a sense just rolling around ever-growing Katamari balls in our lives, whether it's how we think or how we act in the world, if we're doing that in our own lives and also in the society at large, then it means perhaps we could approach our view of life in this way. And what I mean is, it's a view that takes into consideration that what we think is a good idea now we must always be aware that whatever we think is a good idea right now will always have unintended consequences later. There'll be we can't think all the way through to the end game in a lot of these ways. We don't possess a crystal ball. We don't have AI that can do that sort of thing. We're getting better at it as we see the effects of our actions over the past century. We're getting better at it, but it's not something that we're really that skilled at as individuals, or definitely not as a society. Maybe more so as individuals, actually. So maybe we will consider the end game of our various pursuits or the end game of our actions and think about it in terms of a Katamari ball that starts off small and then just grows into this unwieldy, ridiculous ball of just nonsense. Especially those which grow progressively larger, losing because as a Katamari ball gets larger and larger, and I'm saying using Katamari ball as a figurative sense, as any kind of project or any kind of like anything you think was cool that started small and then got really big, the bigger it gets and the progressively larger it gets, it kind of starts to lose its purpose. It loses its original meaning, right? So that's what I'm referring to. So just because you can doesn't mean you should. That's kind of the way to sum that up, right? Just because you can do A doesn't mean you should do it, right? Maybe think it through a little bit. So while most people are conditioned into believing that they actually need the latest iPhone or Android device, the reality is every iteration of the latest and greatest has been carefully planned to offer a tantalizing amount of features which are not available in the previous model. However, upgrading from one version to the next often doesn't come with any great leap in performance or technology. So what we're seeing here is actually my cell phone timeline. And I think there's actually one phone missing, but I don't count that because it went underwater and I didn't have a chance to, because as you can tell, I hold on to phones for a while. Here are, I think I've owned 5 phones in my whole life, starting in 2005. I know I was kind of late to the party in getting a cell phone, but I started with this Nokia Shorty in 2005. I would fly from the West Coast to the East Coast and be on the East Coast for a week. I wouldn't even bring my charger. I would fly back a week later and I would still have like 2 bars on my battery on that Nokia Shorty. It was ridiculous. And it had Snake 2. So, and then my Nokia Shorty at some point died and I got this LG Optimus in 2013. And that was a raging pile of crap. That phone was terrible, but it died on me. So I had to get another phone. So then I got the Samsung Galaxy 3 and that lasted for like 4 years. And then I forget what happened with that one. I think I actually still have it. Oh, I know. There were certain apps that weren't working. And then I went to what I have today is the Galaxy S5, which a lot of people look at my phone and they just kind of cry. So my point is, this upgrade hamster wheel is carefully planned for everything, for TVs and mobile phones and everything. There's an upgrade hamster wheel that's planned many years in advance in order to maximize profits. Even Apple has found itself in hot water lately by purposefully slowing down its older iPhones because they foolishly designed a very good product. Imagine that. They want to... Apple realized, wow, our old iPhone 4s and the 4Ss and whatever, they are so good. People are still using them. Let's just slow them down. So they actually slowed them down on purpose, and they're being sued over it. But my point is, there are good reasons to upgrade your phone when there is like a major change in technology, a major upgrade. But typically, the only reason I actually upgraded to a smartphone from my Nokia phone, really. Yes, the Nokia finally gave up the ghost, but also I moved to a new area and I needed Google Maps, and the LG had Google Maps, so that's something that I actually had a need for. I would still be rocking that LG probably up till maybe, I don't know. I'd still be using that LG if it hadn't actually straight up died on me, because all I needed it for was Google Maps. But the point is, upgrading a phone, typically you're going to have, if you go from like, let's say the Samsung Galaxy S9 to the S10 or something, you're really not getting a lot of value in terms of, here's a breakthrough technology that's in the S10 that's not in the S9, for example. Things might be a little bit, the hardware might be a little bit faster, might be a little bit better in that regard. But really, you can still call, you can still send texts, you can still watch YouTube. You can do pretty much all the same things on the previous model. The newer model just does it maybe a little bit faster. So they plan these things out. So this timeline of my own phones represents really this is my way of, and this isn't for everyone, but my way of, my logic is, and of course, since I'm a wisdom seeker, I think, okay, if I get a new phone, I either get a new phone because my current phone has died, or there's got to be at least one major benefit to that new technology. There has to be one major technical advancement available in the phone that I actually need, or else there's no point in me getting a phone, because I don't really care about the small sets of refinements that are in the next generation phone and the generation after, because I'm like, how many generations behind now? 5, 6, 7 generations behind? I don't know. But the point is, there's small technical refinements that are included in new gen hardware, phones, that kind of thing. But really, it doesn't really amount to that much difference in upgrading from your current version, typically. So when I talk about not taking life too seriously, that doesn't mean life is riddled with cynicism or met with nihilism. Okay, at least this isn't the entire message coming from Katamari. Nor am I proposing that we just go back to sleep and do our very best job pretending that this giant giant Katamari ball of nothing culture that we somehow have found ourselves in represents the pinnacle of human civilization. So we better just embrace it so we don't risk feeling left behind. We have to upgrade to the newest phone so we're not irrelevant as human beings, right? Which, of course, is a ridiculous notion. And it's one that many deep down identify with without even really realizing it's happening to them, right? So just like Katamari, the game is successful in hiding a very important message right under our noses. The real-life giant Katamari Ball of consumerism goes right on underneath our noses as well, without most people paying it any thought whatsoever. It's exactly why unboxing videos are worlds more popular than my channel, or the kind of videos that people like me make. Now, don't get me wrong, I like tech gear too. Much of what I'm saying is coming from a background in technology myself, seeing how this hamster wheel, now I've seen how this hamster wheel of consumerism has been constructed from firsthand experience. There is, however, a point when it becomes just about kind of the next thing, right? It's kind of like the dopamine hit. You get the little dopamine rush. Ooh, wow, yeah. It becomes more about that when we get a new gadget, and not because there's any good reason to upgrade in the first place. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong if you want to upgrade to the next one, the next one, the next one. Doesn't work for me. And if you think it through, and if you're a wisdom seeker, you might come to the conclusion, a similar conclusion. But again, there's always technology that there's always some kind of feature that you may actually need to upgrade with. So just as with everything, there is a middle way. The middle way of seeing something for what it is and being able to have fun with it and make fun of it in the most sincere way possible. And in order to do this, of course, we must understand that we ourselves as individuals are partly contributors to this giant circus of ridiculousness that we've created in the world. This giant Katamari Ball of crap, right? We are all kind of like clowns in this circus in a way. So let's just be honest about that. Just like the beginning of the game, everything starts off as a small Katamari. Every idea or institution created by mankind also starts off small. And of course, it proves itself to be novel and useful to people. And in doing so, the Katamari, whether it's an idea of a website, whatever it is, it starts to grow and grow and grow until at some point it becomes completely just an unmanageable ball of total nonsense. We could say this about the realm of human thought, of course, which leads to ideas such as government, religion, political ideologies, and even platforms like Facebook. They always seem to start small. Remember when Facebook was like really small and cool? Those days are long gone. They always seem to start small and are initially propelled by interesting and new ideas. But then the tendency of the Katamari of the mind, I'm going to make a comparison of this, like this wanting to keep adding things. Okay. This Katamari of the mind means to grow and expand and add things on and further complicate things into a giant ball of nonsense, having outgrown its usefulness, and then it becomes a detriment by virtue of having become completely too big to manage in any sensible sort of way. Giving a more specific example, in the world of software development, there is a well-known Katamari effect known as feature creep or featureitis. Feature creep is when a useful application used by millions slowly gains more and more functionality until the app eventually slows to a crawl and is completely filled with every sort of widget and button and zoom and wham as to render the original functionality and appeal of the app completely unusable and meaningless, which causes many people to flee said application and find something a little more sensible. Then that new application gains in popularity, and then the process starts again, and it turns into a giant ball of Katamari crap, right? So by just being aware of this and our tendencies, These are just natural human tendencies. Don't think of this as good or bad. This just is, okay? Let's take the middle way here. Our tendency is to take a small Katamari of something, whether it's a thought or a project or software, whatever you want to call it, letting it roll around and around in there until it grows into the most unwieldy and silly proportions is, I think, the point of all this. And so instead, maybe each time we play Katamari, we can use it as a way to contemplate upon the various Katamari balls of nonsense to be found in the world today to remind us of what really matters. And what really matters is a Katamari of another sort. The type of Katamari which connects people instead of connecting a bunch of things together in the figurative sense, right? So don't try to gather up a giant ball of your friends and roll around unless maybe everyone has consented to that sort of thing. But it's more about connection. We're talking about growing your Katamari ball of connection. And that's the presentation. So thanks so much, you guys, for watching. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to support my work and get early access to all of my videos many months before they appear on YouTube, please join my member site at reinstallpaul.com. And I will see you guys on the next video.